Thank you for staying tuned to the smooth side of life. This is Smooth 98.1, your love music, love live station on a feel good Friday morning. It's 30th of May 2025, 32 minutes past 6 a.m. You are listening to the Smooth Breakfast. Yours truly, Ayokunmi, ready to take you into a world of business in just 15 minutes. This is a Business Express. And on a Friday, we talk about everything that has to do with the tech sector. It is a Tech Friday edition. And it's going to be an amazing one, as it always is. You get to be a part of it as well. You can send your messages and your thoughts to us on WhatsApp. The number is 0809 444 You can also join the live stream on YouTube. We're streaming live at Smooth 981 FM Lagos. Smooth 981 FM Lagos. This is brought to you by InterSwitch. Yes, indeed. Today, we'll be talking about technology as the Tinubu administration turns to, as we all know, it turned to yesterday. Year three has already begun. And joining me to just take a look at this particular matter is Emeka Obiwulu. He is the founder and CEO of the Offshore Lab. Very good morning to you, Emeka. Great to have you on the Business Express.
Good morning, Aya. Thank you very much for having me. Seems a
It's an
bit
absolute
cold in the studio today,
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I'm decked out in my winter's best. So
huh?
yeah, I have to make sure I don't turn into a popsicle before before the end of the show.
Good man.
Alrighty, so let's start with crypto first of all. That's actually a huge one because there's been a turnaround in the crypto policy from the last administration to
Hmm.
this one. Now, the Security and Exchanges Commission under this administration is regulating crypto. I mean, is that a good idea? Bearing in mind it was completely demonized, if I can say so, under the previous administration.
Absolutely correct. And honestly, I can see where the administration is coming from on this one. We've moved from banning what we don't understand
Mm,
to licensing what we can supervise. You see, when we put this ban was put in place by CBN through what is now the infamous circular of 2021. I think it was 2021. The central bank at the time leaned heavily what it considered its fears of crypto facilitated money laundering, terrorism
right.
financing, illicit fund flows, amongst a number of other concerns it listed at that time. And it's fair to say, to be fair to them, that there was a regulatory void they seemed to want to step in to fill, a void that seemed to be preventing a large level of oversight, accountability, and regulation.
Hmm.
But it's always in the results. If a consequence of that secular being a year after, you could actually record year-on-year growth on Nigeria's P2P crypto market, which very, very quickly became dominant globally. It makes you naturally want to assess the efficacy of that ban, of
Right.
that secular at the time. And if anything, Ayo, we've learned from around the world that outright bans push digital assets into the shadows. And on
Mm,
the flip side, clear rules kind of tend to pull them the opposite direction into daylight. And there's this sort of quiet alignment that systems have to be created to cut fraud, but not at the expense of or without killing innovation.
yes,
So I'll
indeed.
move today. Yeah, what we're doing today, I'll move today as a country to um, if I may, fold crypto, into our SEC, into our Security and Exchange Commission, follows that sort of similar global playbook. The central bank still guards payment stability, but the Security and Exchange Commission now, to a very large extent, demands disclosures, reserve audits,
Okay.
and kind of testing, sandbox testing from the exchanges. So for us as a country, that's normally battling with all of these FX leakages and retail speculation. I think what should be the watchword here is, proportionality. Even the regulation regime itself, as it is, although applauded, has to be very carefully managed to prevent
Right.
undesired outcomes. The moment regulation slips into punishment, you find that talent and your capital just starts relocating. It dashes off to Dubai, Ghana, etc. overnight. So moving
Okay.
away from where we were yesterday's situation, our metric isn't anymore have we cracked down? It's more of, have we made the market safer, more transparent, and still open for local startups to thrive through today's policy position? So in my opinion, the new guidelines are a much needed step towards a more transparent regulatory landscape for our virtual assets.
Nice, nice. I mean, it's clearly a case of moving away from a situation of cutting off your nose to spite your face, if I can put it
Yes.
in those exact terms. All right, let's talk about artificial intelligence, AI. AI is the rave right now, and Nigeria's digital economy ministry under this administration has moved to acquire some GPUs. Now, the thing is, are we as a country really ready for AI?
Yes, yeah. Everything AI, as you'd hear it. I mean, it's that fourth industrial revolution where we really have to be active participants against what tends to be passive consumers. We've lost out on setting up this racism, and I really commend the Honourable Minister Bosun and his team, and the MDAs, NITA in particular as well, and the likes, for what seems to be a multi-pronged approach to not just AI, generally digital transformation. As someone put it, I think it was in The Economist a few months ago, of running tomorrow's race without yesterday's shoes. You don't want to be in that situation on the AI front. And assessing our readiness, there are key pillars, every climate and demographic want to look at and say, how do we stand on this front? And if we go on those key pillars, 5 or 6 of them, if we start to talk about our talent pipeline, our compute power, our power infrastructure, our innovation and capital, you can go one by one, going to assess. You talked about GPUs, alluded to that. For instance, we've ordered this, our first national GPU cluster, but we still have a lot of gaps. We still have most of our researchers renting expensive hours overseas. So we can say on that front, computing is improving, but not totally solved. Talent and skill is our greatest competitive advantage. All this talk of 70% of our youth being under 30 and having over 115 million Nigerians about under 25. You see that strength, but is that strength feeding the market? Our industry, especially tech, is starving for skilled talent. It is still talent, and the paradox of it is that we have this massive force. So on that front, yes, we have the potential, but do we have the finished product to say that on the talent front we are ready? I actually say no. So we look at policy and governance as a third very, very strong pillar. And I see a lot of seriousness in the administration. Actually, we have a draft national AI strategy and an AI ethics framework, which are really essential, things you typically overlook. And these are on the table. But I think there's still a lag with funding and execution.
Right.
For the power pillar, I think I say we're totally on the red there. The less that's said on that front, the better. Nothing I'm saying about that.
I hear you on that. I hear you on that one. Okay, all right, Emeka, I'm talking about strategy because we need to move through this as quickly as possible. Still sticking with the digital economy ministry. Now they have a digital village initiative which aims for a couple of things, namely high-speed connectivity, telemedicine services, remote education, solar-powered infrastructure, device accessibility as well. What do you make of this initiative, really quickly?
So very quickly, what do I make of it? I think I really admire the fact that in one intervention, we've been able to design something that harnesses all of these 5 dividends. You mentioned education, power, health, entrepreneurship all together. And with that individual and combined potential to accelerate rural inclusion, if I may. And yesterday was all over the news, the launch of the first cluster in Gwagwalada in Abuja. It's an ambitious plan, but when you have that private-public sector collaboration, quite a clear roadmap, and that local stakeholder buy-in, which is what it looks like from what we saw yesterday, then the indicators are quite positive, and it gives me cause for a little bit of warmth there and positivity and looking upward to it. So I have a positive outlook towards that. I like the pillars that were picked in there and collapsed into this initiative. And I like the demographic that has actually been targeted for this level of inclusion.
All right. Interesting perspective there. Now, looking at this current government, I mean, year three just started yesterday, and there are plans to establish about 7,000 digital hospitals and schools in rural communities as well. Now, aiming to complete these projects by the end of the year. Is this way too ambitious, or a case of aiming for the moon and landing among the stars?
Yeah. So this question ties back to your last question, really. So this initiative they have is all encompassing and includes that digital connectivity that covers the hospitals as well. So they are not
Mm,
necessarily building new hospitals and schools per se. They are creating that community level of digital connectivity that empowers and brings all of the benefits of having that connectivity in those areas. And they have a plan from that roadmap, the way I understand it. After this pilot they did, which will serve both as a test point and data gathering opportunity, they want the next level of it to be a rollout into 500 nodes at that point. And after
okay.
that 500 node rollout, they're looking to do a third step of it, which is another 7,000. But that 7,000 that we talked of, I think there was a bit of a misinterpretation. It looked like the end of the year, but their intention on that roadmap was actually a 3-year plan to roll out this connectivity across these 7,000 points. And they have a sort of mixed grid of their financial modeling and financiers. Globacom and Huawei are heavily involved in this pilot. They have further
Okay.
collaborators for the second phase of it. Funding is always, if it was left to just the government and private for public sector, then you'd look at all of the constraints there. But when you see that private sector in participation, heavy one, with a clear roadmap and plan of how those other phases within realistic timelines are going to be funded, implemented, and rolled out, it looks to me at this first instance as probably feasible, practical, and a well thought through strategy.
Mm. All right. I'm actually glad you mentioned the private sector. Time has actually run out, but because you did, I need to, tie this in. As you just mentioned that, the private sector participation would, go a long way in achieving these objectives, in a more timely manner. I mean, what exactly would incentivize them to actually participate and be a part of such a project?
So if you look at the parties I mentioned involved in this pilot in Huawei and Globacom, they are part of that ecosystem, the telecoms ecosystem. And when you have a government and who works very closely with its private sector, collaborates, listens, and works towards a mutual aim. So whatever regulations, whatever policies, whatever uh, fines or whatever comes into play there's a conversation that happens that seems to have been very healthy between the private sector participation and the ministry so far, because most of the projects from 3MTT to the broadband rollout to this one, there has been very heavy private sector participation, and that bodes well
Mm,
for the economy. And I think it's a lesson a lot of other ministries have to learn. So I think the level of collaboration, proactive collaboration between the ministry and the private sector players towards agreeing, aligning on what a project should be like, conceiving it together, planning it together in a way that's mutually beneficial to both parties, and then implementing it as one ecosystem. I think that goes a long way in getting that stakeholder buy-in from the private sector, to collaborate on these projects. And I think
right.
that creates a level of resilience to any initiative that you build in that context, not just for this ministry, but for every other MTA that we have in country.
Definitely can cut across board and move things a whole lot quicker. Let me round off with a message here from Gilbert Musa. He's in Festac. He says, laudable digital initiative, but first things first, have we addressed stable electricity, good road network, potable water, amongst other basic community needs? Well, maybe not entirely, Gilbert, but I think at this point in time, it's a function of being able to walk and chew gum at the same time. Everything can, should I say, move in tandem, if I can put
Mhm.
it that way, and not necessarily wait till all those things are in place. And then we begin to talk about these issues because, hey, as Mecca mentioned earlier on, things are moving really gradually in the world. We don't want to be left behind once again, as we have been, you know,
Mhm.
at different points. But I get your point, Gilbert. Those basic things are definitely needed. Let them work side by side in terms of getting us where we need to be. All right, on that note, we need to call it a morning on the show. It has been such an interesting one today. Thank you so much to my guest, Emeka Obiwulu. He is the founder and CEO of the Offshore Lab. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Pleasure is all mine, Aya. Thank you very much.
All right, have a great Friday and a swell weekend ahead.
You too. You too.
All right, Lagos, thank you for being a part of the show this morning. Keep it tuned to the Smooth Breakfast. Do not go anywhere. I've got great music lined up for you as we wait till 7:30 to get into the world of the papers and the major news headlines on Freshly Pressed.